To understand aggregate supply and demand, you must first review supply. On a graph of price level and quantity, demand is when quantity increases as price level decreases. And supply is when quantity increases as price level increases. In the middle is equilibrium. This is where the demand of goods and the supply of goods is equal. It's also where the price level of the good and the quantity produced is comparable. But this only applies to one product, whereas aggregate supply and demand affect the whole economy. So if supply and demand is for one apple, then aggregate supply and demand is for the workings of the whole orchard. Here we have supply and demand. And we're going to see what happens when a new study comes out that finds turkey to be much healthier than beef. Now, the shifters of demand are income, change in related goods, change in people's expectations, change in complementary goods, and change in consumers' tastes and or preferences. Now, turkey is a related good to beef, and therefore, if the demand of turkey goes up, the demand of beef is going to go down. So that means the demand curve is going to shift inward. That gives us a new equilibrium here. And we see that the quantity of beef goes down, as well as the price. Here's another example of supply and demand, where the U.S. rubber supply is decreasing in the market for bicycles. Now, the shifters of supply are expectations, technology, people, inputs, and government regulations. Because the rubber supply is an input in the bicycle good, that means supply curve is going to shift inward. This gives us a new equilibrium. So what this means is the quantity of bikes decreases, but the price level increases.
Okay, here we have ADAS. I don't like this because there's no entity with the aggregate demand curve. That doesn't help me though, that's what they're supposed to be, but I don't know which one is which. Aggregate supply completely wrong. Can be separated into two demands, which are at the end you don't have LRAS. At the end you get every answer I would say you're SRAS. And each stand for long run aggregate supply and short run aggregate supply. Now, short run aggregate supply can be divided up into two smaller portions. The Keynesian portion and you can go back to the classical portion, 7 and 9. The Keynesian portion is controlled by minimum wage, contracts, anything that controls wages for the benefit of the worker. And during recessions, when a company would like to lower wages, they can't because of these contracts. So they have to lay people off. So they are underneath full employment. And then when those contracts expire, they are now able to renegotiate wages and they can rehire those people. And so they start to get back to increase full employment, and they can even go over full employment, and then they'll have to eventually come back down. Here we have the ADAS model, and we're going to see what happens if the U.S. gets influx of migrant workers. Now, the only things that can shift LRAS are a change in technology or a change in resources.
such as workers. To find out whether it shifts in or out, you have to think about if the U.S. has more workers, there are lower wages for each worker, which means it costs less to produce a good, which means more goods. Therefore, LROS shifts out. Normally, this would be the new equilibrium point, but because this is LROS, it's going to take a while for this equilibrium to catch up.
All right, here we have the ADAS model, and we are given a situation that says oil prices go up. And we know that because Mr. Pibb, production, input prices, business taxes, and business regulations, all of those things affect SRAS. And oil prices are an input that companies would use. And because the oil prices are going up, they can afford to buy less oil, which means they can afford to produce less goods. This means that the shift would be in. So now this is the new equilibrium. This is the new Y. And this is the new PL. This means that our GDP has gone down while price levels have gone up.
Here we have the ADAS model. Let's see what happens when the government invests in military technology. We know from the acronym SIG-XM that consumers, investment, government spending, exports minus imports all shift the AD curve. Now that we know that government investments shift the curve, we need to know whether it shifts inward or outward. Government investment puts money back into the economy, and therefore we know that the AD curve shifts outward. This gives us a new equilibrium point at E1. This also changes our RGDP and our price level. However, this is only for the short-term effect with wage laws and contracts. When those expire, we have a new equilibrium on the LROS curve.